guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. For those who's new, my name is Christian and I love plants, and in today's video is for all of those new plant parents that started to get into the plant game. I'm noticing either through my Instagram or even through YouTube, I'm getting a lot of questions from a lot of newbies on how to care for your plants, and I don't know where this wave of new plant parents started to come from. I'm guessing it's the quarantine. You know, there's a lot of us obviously stuck at home, and honestly, having plants in my home has helped me get through these quarantine times. So I can only imagine what it's like for a lot of those who may not have plants, and the fact that you guys have started to take on your plant journey, I think is a great thing. Now, I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, and there's a lot of information out there and terminology that often we use that can be confusing. So hopefully I'm here to kind of help you guys break that down and shed some light on how to care for your plants, especially as a beginner, and avoid some of the common mistakes we often experience. And hopefully you'll find this information and video helpful so you can be successful in your plant journey. We'll cover a couple of things. We'll do lighting, watering, and potting. Let's begin with lighting. Lighting is an important source of energy for a plant to thrive and photosynthesize. However, placing your plant in a bright area doesn't necessarily mean they're getting the light they need. And I'll show you guys in a second here. But first, let's talk about the different direction of lightings you can get. There's north, east, west, and south facing light or window that you'll often hear. North facing light is the least intense and lighting you can possibly get from all the directions. You'll also find that you're not necessarily getting a lot of direct sunlight with a north facing window. However, it is probably the most consistent in terms of its energy throughout the course of the day from morning till sundown. And east, on the other hand, gets a lot of good lighting during the morning hours. And that's because the sun rises from the east and obviously sets from the west. So as it moves throughout the day, it gets less intense during the mid-afternoon and evening. Now, a west is obviously the opposite side, where the morning isn't necessarily as intense or as bright. However, as the sun kind of moves throughout the day, it gets pretty hot and intense during the mid-afternoon. Now, a south-facing window gives you the most intense and strongest light out of all the four, and it's pretty consistent from mid-morning till mid-afternoon. You'll often find that you get a lot of direct sunlight with it as well. Many tropical houseplants do prefer a south-facing window, and this is where you can have a lot more options. Now, regardless of the direction your window or your light comes from, there are different levels of it: low, medium, and bright. How to measure this lighting really depends on the view and visibility of where the plant is located. So for example, here in my south-facing window, I'm standing right close to it. You can see I have a full view of the sky. So if I was a plant like this pothos or this ficus altissima or this fiddly fig, this is a lot of bright lighting that I get because I have a full view of the sky. This entire living room right now, this is what I would consider bright lighting. Where my string of hearts is, it's about 10 feet away from the window, you know, where my Monstera Thai constellation is at, and obviously the Pilia peperomioides. These are getting a lot of bright light. Now, if I step further back, that's closer to the kitchen, the view of the sky is still there, but obviously it's not as wide as it was when I was closer to it. So I would consider this like medium to bright light. This is where I have my Syngoniums, my Calatheas, my ZZ plant, because you know, they do like that type of medium to bright light. Now, if I step further back, say near the entrance or the door, the view of the sky gets a little bit smaller. So this is what I would consider low light. It still gets a bit of light, but obviously not as intense or bright compared to when I was closer to the window. So that's the way I kind of measure low, medium, and bright light. Now, if your plant is placed in an area and it has no view of the sky, pretend you're the plant and go in that location, it has no view of the sky or the window, that is no light at all. Even though your place may look bright because it's daylight, they are not getting the light that they need. So definitely be a little bit more aware of where you place your plants in your home. Make sure they at least have a view of that sky. Now, you're gonna also hear terms like indirect and direct lighting, you know, direct bright light, direct medium light, or indirect medium light. And pretty much what direct and indirect means is direct lighting is when the sunbeams or the sun rays are hitting your plants. So it's like you go to the beach and you're trying to get a suntan and you want that sun to fully, you know, blast on you. That is direct lighting. Versus indirect lighting is, you know, the light is a bit diffuse. You know, it can be like partly cloudy and only a bit of sunbeams are hitting the plant, or it can be diffused using like a sheer curtain. Or in this example, you can see the pothos is getting direct sunlight, but if I was to just move this back by about a foot, it'll get indirect sunlight. It's still in the bright area, so this would be considered indirect bright light. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit more context on what direct and indirect light means. Now, as a beginner, I always recommend to avoid having your plants in direct sunlight because the chances of their leaves burning burning is likely. You know, we can't put like sunblock lotion on them like we do on our skin, so I would definitely be careful about putting them in a direct bright light area. So certain plants will do better with certain lighting condition, or either low, medium, or bright. I always recommend to assess the lighting environment you get in your home, and from there do a bit of research to determine which plants will do best in your home environment. So let's talk about watering, another important source for a plant to thrive or die from. That's right, die from. Oftentimes beginners and newbies get a plant and then they hear someone say just water it once a week and it'll be fine. That is absolutely not true, because it really does depend on the plant you have, the size of the container, where you have it placed, how much lighting it gets. So you do want to be mindful of all of those factors. For example, let's take a look at my Ficus elasticas. I have 3 different sizes here. They're all the same type of plant. They're all in the same location, a lot of bright indirect south-facing light. And obviously these guys don't need to be watered at the same time, and that's because of the size they're in. So this smaller one in the 4-inch container, this will dry out a lot quicker than the 6-inch container. However, the 6-inch one will dry out a lot faster than this 10-inch one. So you guys can see the difference there. Even if these guys were placed in different locations, they still will not be on the same watering schedule. So you got to be mindful of all of that, because the lighting does factor into it. Again, the size of the pot, because the more soil there is, the longer it will take for it to dry out. So just be mindful of that. When in doubt, when it comes to watering, guys, water when your soil is completely dry. To help determine whether the soil is wet or dry, take your finger, stick it into the soil at least an inch down, and see if that soil is clumping and sticking to your finger and it feels wet, that's wet. If it's a bit loose and falling off your finger, that's dry. And if you want another way to determine that, lift that pot and see if it's light. If it's light plus the soil feels dry, that means your plant needs to be watered. How much water should you give your plant when it comes to watering? My rule of thumb is whenever I'm watering my plant is I allow it to fill up at the top of the container or until I see that water drain through, and I will typically do that at least twice. However, it does depend on the size of the pot it's in. So taking this Ficus elastica as an example again, this 4-inch container, I'll probably do that about 3 or 4 times, only because I know this dries a lot faster than say the 10-inch larger Ficus elastica that you see here. I would probably only water this guy once until I see that water drain through, because there's so much soil and it's such a large container that I don't want to risk overwatering this guy. Bonus tip, if you accidentally overwatered your plant, what you guys can do is grab yourself a chopstick and aerate the soil by gently loosening the top layer. You know, be careful to not damage the roots, but this will allow the air to pass through and avoid that plant from having root rot. One of the most important things to keep in mind when it comes to watering your plants is making sure that water drains through. And a common mistake that I often find beginners make is taking their plant out of the nursery container and potting it directly into a decorative pot. Now, most decorative pot does not have any drainage holes, so if you do that and then you're following your once a week watering method, what's going to happen is that water is going to continue to sit there because it has nowhere to go, and eventually you're going to experience yellow leaves, and then your plant's going to get black, and next thing you know, that plant has gone to plant heaven. The number one cause of plants dying is from overwatering, so you do want to be careful about where you have your plant potted. If you're going to have it in a decorative pot, just make sure there's drainage holes in there. But like I said, most of them don't, so what I typically use and what I have most of my plants in are in these plastic containers that has these drainage holes, and then I take that and place it into a decorative pot. Now, some people can drill holes in the decorative pot or use terracotta pots. These are actually really good because not only are there drainage holes at the bottom of this, but because it's terracotta, you know, air does flow nicely throughout the rest of the pot. So again, recommendation, as long as there are drainage holes, you can either use plastic containers and then just put it in a decorative pot. Drill holes in your decorative pot. There's a lot of DIY videos that you can watch on how to do that, or use terracotta pots. So there you guys have it. Those are some of the common mistakes that hopefully you can turn into guiding principles, because honestly, taking care of plants doesn't need to be complicated and it doesn't need to be technical. If you can understand and practice these basic principles on how to care for plants when it comes to lighting and watering, you will do just fine in your plant journey, and I'm so excited for you guys. If you found this video very helpful and you think someone else can benefit from it, give it a thumbs up, share it, and comment below. And other than that, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.